If you have a 2006 to 2011 Honda Civic and you've diagnosed or you're fairly certain that your AC compressor is shot, it's an easy DIY job and you can save a lot of money doing it, and we're going to do it right now. In my case, the clutch would turn on intermittently. Even though I had good pressure, I had no leaks, I checked the blend door. When it was working, it would go from hot and cold, and I even replaced the clutch relay. None of it helped. It pointed towards the compressor. Getting to it isn't that bad. It's just underneath the alternator though, so we do have to remove that. But you don't even have to fully disconnect the cabling. All you have to do is unmount it and move it to the side. We're going to start off by disconnecting the positive battery terminal, just in case that alternator slips. We don't want that to arc. Next, we need to remove this serpentine belt. It's a 14mm bolt head for the tensioner pulley. Number one, it is a hydraulic tensioner, so you're not just going to swing it up easily. You have to take it easy and go slow. Number two, the best way to get this is to use a wrench and a breaker bar and slowly push up on it until you have enough slack on the belt to remove it. Next, you undo the harness that goes down to the AC compressor. Now I took this top portion off, not realizing that the bracket stays with the alternator, so you don't have to. But the bottom half you will, and there's two plastic zip tie tabs that go into a bracket. You're going to want to use a pair of pliers or a pick to remove those. With that harness to the side, we can remove this alternator. The two 12-volt lines that go into it, we shouldn't have to remove, because once we unmount this, we should be able to move the entire thing over and rest it on top of the engine. There are two 12mm bolts that hold the alternator in. One up top that's long that goes through and back into itself, and a shorter one that's underneath in a hard spot to get to, and it connects to a bracket. These are 12mm bolts, and once you break them loose, they're easy to come out. Now the bottom one is a little bit harder to get to, also a 12mm bolt, but the bolt head is almost right in between the two pulleys here. If you look at the socket, you'll see exactly where it's at. You're going to have to just do it by feel. Once you lock onto it though, and you break it free, it comes out easily. With the bottom bolt removed, you should be able to wiggle this alternator out and just gently place it on top of this exhaust manifold. With the alternator resting securely, you can turn your attention to the bracket that holds the bottom part of the alternator in. It's also where the piston for the tensioner pulley connects to. There's two bolts, a longer one up top and a shorter one down bottom. The one underneath is a little bit hard to get to. If you use a swivel, you should be able to break it free and back it out almost by hand. Don't take the top one out just yet, because if you do, you won't have enough leverage to take off the other bolts. So leave the top bolt in, take off the tensioner pulley, and then remove the bracket. Once you have that bracket out of the way, you have access to the AC compressor. Now this is where you need to make sure you have no refrigerant in your lines. So at this point, you should have already taken it to a shop where they can properly extract this refrigerant, because we're not supposed to vent that into the atmosphere. Bottom line, you want no refrigerant, no pressure in the system. If you're like me and your refrigerant somehow mysteriously leaked out, you can continue. Now there's two lines, a high pressure and a low pressure, that goes into the pump, and they back out quite easily with, I believe this is a 10mm bolt. Once you have both of these lines disconnected, they might be tight, you have to wiggle them a little bit, but move them out and push them to the side as far as you can. I took a little piece of paper towel and covered the holes on these lines just in case. Didn't want to get anything in there. After that, you're going to start working on the four bolts that hold the compressor in. The two top ones are really easy to get to. There's a bottom one towards the right, not that difficult. The bottom at the left is hard to get to. Here's what the layout looks like. I ended up using one of these right angle extensions to get in there and back it out. I'll put a link to it below. I suggest removing the two lower bolts first, get that out of the way. Once you do that, the two top ones are very easy to get to, and actually once you can back them all the way out and the compressor stays in place, because there's these little ears, these little tabs that kind of keep it locked in. But once all four bolts are removed, you should be able to wiggle this thing right up out through the top. It is a very tight fit. You might have to use a little pry bar to bend a little bit of the back of that fan shroud, but it can come out through this way. Just be careful not to damage the wire harness of the new one going in, of course, or the lines that are pushed to the side there. The new one goes back in the same way, right down to this space, and we're going to reassemble in the opposite order. Now, unless you're doing an OEM unit, you're not going to have those little tabs that fit into the slot that hold it in place for you. I'm okay with that. I save money on the aftermarket. Just hold it in place, get those 4 bolts back in. This is when you take off the plugs that keep the oil in this unit during shipping. This unit comes pre-filled with PAG oil that you'll need, so don't take this out until the last minute. Take these out and you're going to reassemble those lines. Putting these lines back in, the new compressor will come with O-rings, so you're going to want to swap those out. Pull your old O-rings off, clean up the mating surfaces here a little bit. You're going to want to lube up your new O-rings a little bit with some of that PAG oil. Get them on there, press these into place, and lock these down. And by the way, when you're tightening these down, the two 10mm bolts for your suction and your discharge lines, they are torqued to 86 inch-pounds. The 4 bolts that you needed to put in to get this compressor back on, those are at 16 foot-pounds. Now for me, at this point, before I remount the alternator, I'm going to check to see if there's any leaks in my system by using a vacuum. If you don't have a vacuum, number one, they're cheap on Amazon. I'll put the link below. But if you intend on bringing your car somewhere for them to vacuum test and fill, then you'll just remount the alternator and keep moving. For me, I want to run this first, just in case I have any issues. I don't have to take out the alternator again. Do this by taking a manifold, connecting it to the high and the low pressure ports in your engine bay, connect it to the pump, and run it. And you're going to want to run it for about half an hour to see if you can hold negative pressure. So I'll leave that running and I'll keep an eye on the gauges as I start to put together the alternator. The bracket for the alternator, there are 2 holes here towards the left side. The one most forward to the front of the car is where you will reattach the piston for your tensioner pulley. With the bracket in place, you can go ahead and remount the alternator. I'm going to use this right angle extension to get that lower bolt back in, but both of these 12mm bolts get torqued down to 17 foot-pounds. From here, what's left is reconnecting this harness. Make sure it fully seats and it clicks in. And then don't forget to put in the wire tie clips that are on the bracket that makes its way down to the compressor. After that, it's putting the serpentine belt on and you're done. The belt was the absolute hardest part of this job. And if you're like me and you chose to put a new one in and you took the whole thing off, you'll need this diagram and you need some patience and dexterity. With the belt back on, you're pretty much done with this job. And if you want this to be 100% foolproof, you could bring it into a shop for them to vacuum test and fill properly with the right machines and with the precise amount of refrigerant. But if you want a full-on DIY, it just takes a couple more tools and it's easy to do. Here you can see my gauges are set and they are still locked in with negative pressure. And this is after I ran the vacuum for 30 minutes, then closed everything and let it sit like that. I know I'm good. I've got no issues with leaks. So with the manifold still connected and the high side always closed, I'm going to open up that low side. I'm going to connect my refrigerant and I'm going to start to let it flow in. The car needs to be on and running with the AC on full blast. You'll take that refrigerant can and you'll just kind of slowly shake it to the right, like 90 degrees, up and down, and you'll see the refrigerant start to flow through that little glass window. If you want to get this as close to perfect as possible, there's a plate or a sticker somewhere in your engine bay that will tell you exactly how much refrigerant your system uses. And if you can use a digital scale, you should be able to weigh it, subtract what you're putting in to kind of get a rough estimate of what you've put in there. I don't do it that way. It ends up being too difficult for me. I just do it by the pressure, which is not the optimal way, but it still ends up working. So as you start to fill the system with refrigerant, you'll notice the gauges start to climb, the pressure starts to build, and at one point your AC compressor will kick on. Good job, you know it's working. And I'm going to continue to fill until I get to that range where it's supposed to be at. Here's a chart that shows you what different pressures are regarding your ambient temperature. That's important too. You might have to make some adjustments to that, depending how hot or cold it is wherever you're doing this work. But you can Google what the normal operating range should be so you know where you're at. But once that's up and the pressures look good, I'm going to close that in, make sure it holds, come around and check the car. Should be coming out ice cold, and in my case it was. I like making these videos to show how easy it is to do some of these things on your own and of course to save money while doing it. I have links below for some of the products and tools I've used, and if you use my links, I will earn a whole 17 cents.